1996, he was a senior advisor to the Dole Kemp campaign for presidency. In 1999, Mr. Cain sought to leverage his restaurant experience with the technology market, became CEO and president of Retail DNA. Today, he's a radio talk show host of the Herman Cain Show. He's a Fox News business commentator, fair and balanced. Cain remains president and CEO of the New Voice Incorporated, serves on the board of directors of AGCO, Hallmark Cards, Whirlpool. In 2004, he ran for the U.S. Senate in Georgia. He is an outstanding individual. He's got an excellent resume, and he's got a lot to say. Please welcome our keynote speaker tonight, Mr. Herman Cain.
Thank you, Governor. Good evening.
Good evening.
Y'all can do better than that. Good evening.
Good evening.
Let it be borne in mind that the tragedy of life does not lie in not reaching your goals. The tragedy lies in having no goals to reach for. It's not a calamity to die with dreams unfulfilled, but it is a calamity to have no dreams. Keeping the American dream alive is an appropriate title for this celebration tonight. Keeping the American dream alive is an appropriate theme because the American dream is under attack. It's a lot different today than when my father walked off of that small farm to pursue his American dream. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to be a lot different when our grandchildren grow up to pursue their American dreams. My dad grew up on a small farm in Tennessee. At the age of 18, he walked off of that farm literally with just the clothes on his back. When I talked to my uncle, who is still living today, he said when L Jr., that's what they used to call my dad, walked off of that farm, he's not sure he even had shoes on his feet. But he left that farm to pursue his American dreams. One of Dad's and Mom's dreams was to one day to be able to live in a whole house. You see, growing up on that small farm, Dad lived in a 3-room shack with his 11 brothers and sisters and Mom and Dad. So when he left that small farm to pursue his American dreams, went after his dreams with the only kind of equity he had, sweat equity. He didn't have a degree. He didn't have an SUV. Sweat equity was the only asset that he had. And Dad ended up moving to Atlanta with my mom, where they raised my brother and I. Dad at one point worked 3 jobs. He was a barber, he was a janitor, he was a chauffeur, all at the same time, because he needed one job to put food on the table. That second job to keep a roof over our head, and that third job to save for his American dream, not somebody else's. Not his mama, not his daddy, not his sisters, not his brother, his American dream. One of Dad's dreams was to be able to buy that whole house. I'll never forget the day that he came home on a Saturday. That was a surprise. Man working 3 jobs isn't home on Saturdays. Dad told my mom, my brother, and I, get in the car. We got in the car. You didn't argue with Dad. Got in the car and Dad drove west on Bankhead Highway. About 35 minutes later, Dad made a couple of turns and eventually ended up on a little street called Albert Street. Pulled up to the third house on the right. Little brick house. Not attached to any other house. With grass growing around. You see, we live in what my brother and I used to call a half a house. I think in some parts of the country they call it a shotgun house. 3 rooms on one side, 3 rooms on the other side, with a wall going down the middle. And we lived in half of it. We used to say to Dad, Dad, why do we live in a half a house? Dad said, it's a duplex. Because we didn't know he was saving money to buy that whole house, which was one of his dreams here in the greatest country in the world. Dad pulled up in front of that brand new little brick house. He announced to the family, this is our home, our new home. We said, what? We jumped out of the car. I was in the 8th grade. My brother was in 6th grade. We jumped out of the car, ran up to the front door, anxiously awaiting for Dad to get there to put the key in the door. Dad walked up very proudly, put the key in the front door, went inside, said it has 2 bedrooms, one for you boys, one for your mom and me, and I'm going to buy y'all twin beds. Twin beds? We thought we died and gone to heaven. You see, living in that duplex, my brother and I slept on a cot in the kitchen. And every morning we would argue over who's supposed to take it up, and every evening we'd argue over who's supposed to let it out. Governor, that's where I started to develop my early debating skills. Brand new house. My mother was in tears of joy. She didn't know that Dad had saved enough money to buy that house. She didn't even know that Dad had gone out and bought the house. Don't try that today. You'll be living in that sucker by yourself.
Amen.
But that was one of Dad's American dreams, and he was able to achieve it. One of his other dreams was to give his sons a little bit better start in life, just like your parents wanted to give you a little bit better start in life. Just like we want to give our kids and grandkids a little bit better start in life in order for them to achieve their American dream in the greatest country in the world. Mom and Dad gave us that better start. Encouraged us to go to school, and we did. Encouraged us to go to college, and we did. Encouraged us to graduate, and we did. Because of the inspiration and the encouragement of Mom and Dad, I was able to achieve my American dream, climbing the corporate ladder. After graduating from Morehouse College with a bachelor's in mathematics and physics, they didn't have engineering, Mr. Brown. I took math and physics. Went to work for the Department of the Navy as an exterior ballistician. From there, I worked for the Coca-Cola Company. From there, I went to the Pillsbury Company, climbed the corporate ladder to become Vice President of Information Technology for the Pillsbury Corporation. From there, I made a career change, went to work for the Burger King Corporation, reclimbed the corporate ladder again to become a Vice President in Pillsbury. Based upon the performance of that particular assignment, eventually became President, CEO of Godfather's Pizza, based in Omaha, Nebraska, where I ran it for 10 years. My American dream was simple. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder. I wanted to climb the corporate ladder so I could live a little bit better than that little shack that Mom and Dad grew up different shacks, but they both grew up on shacks. So we have been able to achieve our American dream. So my story is not unique. It's just my story. Everybody in here has a story, being able to live their American dream, but it is under attack by what I call the Asians. Too much legislation, too much regulation, and too much taxation. It is under attack. But the good news is we are fighting back. You fought back on November the 2nd when you elected the right governor and the right legislation here. They are fighting back in Wisconsin, where they elected, like you, a governor willing to lead. And he is leading. That's what people are supposed to do. So until we get the right people in the right positions, which we are beginning to do, we will be able to fight back and defend the American dream. And I have a lot of faith and confidence that the American people are going to rise to the occasion. You see signs of it. I see signs of it. I travel a lot. I speak to a lot of groups. In fact, I leave tomorrow to go to Little Rock to speak at a Defending the American Dream conference. From there, I go to Phoenix, Arizona to speak at a national Tea Party Patriots rally. Reporters ask me all the time, do you think this Tea Party thing is going to die out? They couldn't kill it by saying that it was a bunch of racists. So now they just call it a thing. I said, no. I said, the people in Washington, D.C., they think that this thing is going to die out, but it is getting bigger and stronger across this great nation. Why? I believe it is happening because of what I describe as the 4 pillars of the greatness of America. The first pillar that has allowed this nation to become the greatest country in the world is the vision of the founding fathers when they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And I did not leave out endowed by their Creator. And it should never be left out. Two of the greatest documents ever written, the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, because of the vision of the founding fathers. And what was so remarkable about that vision is I had to explain to a listener one night who called in my radio show. It was a 4th of July special, Independence Day special that I was doing. And I was talking about the founders and their courage and their vision. I was going through the Declaration of Independence to remind listeners about the importance and the content of that great document. And a listener called. He said, Mr. Cain, I don't understand why you are giving so much praise to the founding fathers. They had slaves. I said, I know that. So why do you have a problem with me giving them recognition for their courage and their vision? He said they had slaves. I said, you missed the point. The greatness of our founding fathers is that they didn't set the bar where they were that day. They didn't say, some men are created equal. They said all men are created equal, such that over years and decades, we would have to work up to that ideal. That was the greatness of the founders of this great country, which is one of those pillars that helped to make America great. The vision of high achievement. And we did. Second great pillar our political freedom. If you don't believe that our political freedom, despite its flaws, despite its hiccups from time to time in terms of our process, if you don't believe that that is one of the things that has allowed this nation to become great, just take a look at what happened in Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and other countries around the world. They are demonstrating that democracy cannot be bottled up forever. And it is exploding across this nation. We, as a young nation, started out with those democratic principles. And when we get upset or disagree with the way things are going, we don't have to riot in the streets. We go to the ballot box, like America did on November the 2nd. Third great pillar of this nation, our economic freedom. Being on WSB radio for a number of years, periodically there would be some special news reports, and I'd have to break in to my radio show and become a newsman. And I would always break in and say, ladies and gentlemen, I interrupt this program to give you a breaking news announcement. I have a breaking news announcement tonight for the liberals, the socialists around the world. Capitalism won. It won. The free market system works. When we get government out of the way, that doesn't mean that we don't need some legislation, some regulation, and some taxation. We just don't need too much legislation and too much regulation and too much taxation. The free market system works. And yes, America is an exceptional nation. We are not mediocre or average. Mediocre is not in our DNA. And yes, the United States of America is a Judeo-Christian nation. And I'm proud to say it anywhere to anybody on this planet. Woo! The free market system works. Look at our standard of living. Even though we are being challenged, even though this economy is stalled, in the current economic state that we're in today, quite frankly, it has become a national security crisis. Because there's a country called China. They're growing at 10% compounded per year. Our GDP growth last year was 2.6%. The year before that, it was 2.1%. That's anemic. And based upon conservative calculations, if China continues to grow at 10% per year on a much smaller GDP level of about $6 trillion, and we continue to grow at an anemic rate on $14 trillion in 15 to 20 years, China will have an economy as big as ours. The security threat is if they become as big as us GDP-wise, with 1 billion more people, with an aspiring military. They want a military as good as ours. They're not there yet, but they're trying. They want the same weapons capability that we have. They're not there yet, but they're still trying. And then to also be the country that holds the greatest percentage of our foreign debt, that is a security crisis. I was speaking in Iowa recently, and a lady stood up and asked me a question during Q&A. She said, well, what is your China strategy? I said, it's real simple. Outgrow them. Outgrow them. That's our China strategy. You see, we're not going to be able to sing Kumbaya with the Chinese or anybody else to stop them from getting nuclear weapons, or stop them from trying to become the most business-friendly country in the world. Kumbaya is not a strategy. No. some of our greatest presidents have said, it's called peace through strength. Not only military strength, but also economic strength. And that's why economic freedom is one of our great pillars that has allowed a nation so young relatively to become so great. And then that fourth pillar of America's greatness is probably something you don't hear a lot about. And that is America's ability to change. Look where we have come from as a nation. Name another nation that has gone through the changes that this nation has in a short 235 years as of July 4th. Our ability to change. Our ability to change politically. Our ability to change socially. And our ability to change economically. And we are seeing that change take place right now, right here in our lifetime. So what do we do to win this fight? What do we do to ward off these attacks on the American dream? Three simple things. Be informed. Know what's going on. You see, stupid people are ruining America. Stupid people are ruining America. Secondly, be involved. Be involved. You involved with the chamber. You involved with your business. You involved with your community organization. You involved with the politics that goes on in your district, your state, your city, your local community, your nation. Why? Electing the right people is no longer a spectator sport. We have to be involved. We want our kids and our grandkids to have the same type of opportunity and their American dream as we have. And thirdly, be inspired. You see, there are some folks who want you to believe that you cannot flip the governorship in one election, that you cannot change Congress in one election. Oh, yes, we can. We did. The job's not done yet. There are people who want you to believe that some things are inevitable in terms of the weakening of America. So be inspired. We are making changes, and we will continue to make changes. And my mom and my dad and that story, that inspires me. That's one of the things that inspires me. But let me share with you one other thing that inspires me to believe in this great country, to believe that we can beat back those attacks on the American dream. 12 years ago, I was attending a board meeting in Hawaii. Our daughter was having our first grandchild in Atlanta. My wife, we were living in Omaha at the time, didn't go to Hawaii with me because we knew it was about time for the first grandbaby to be born. And sure enough, the last day of the board meeting, my wife called me and said, Melon is going into labor. I'm going to Atlanta. And I said, okay, I probably won't get there before the blessed event has happened. So I started, after the board meeting, to head back to Atlanta, coming from Hawaii. And I kept calling that day and the next day. And actually went on for 3 days. I called and talked to my son. I said, Vincent, I said, do we have a baby yet? I said, no, Dad, we don't have a baby yet. This was the second day. The third day, I called him when I was changing planes in Dallas. Vincent, do we have a baby yet? No, Dad, we don't have a baby yet. Well, what's the problem? He said, Dad, it's a slow baby. I know that. But is everything all right? Yes. Melanie okay? Yes. No complications? No. Just a slow baby. Friday, January the 22nd, when I got to Atlanta, I arrived at the hospital, Piedmont Hospital, at 9:30 p.m. Walked into the waiting room, asked my son Vincent, do we have a baby yet? No, Dad, we don't have a baby yet. At 9:56, my wife came out of the delivery room, looked at me and my son with her hands on her hips. You have a granddaughter. I said, good. What's with the attitude? You have a granddaughter. Aren't you excited? Yes. Is everything okay with mom and daughter? Yes. So what's the problem? She said, I've been with this girl for 3 days and you show up and the baby's born. She was waiting on granddad. She said, I know, and I got to hear that story for the rest of my life. That's right. She was waiting on granddad. And then when I went into that delivery room, my daughter said, Dad, would you like to hold it? Yes. I took that little 20-minute-old baby in my arms, and I looked in that face. The first thought that went through my mind wasn't, what do I do to give her a good start in life? The first thought that went through my mind was, what do I do to make this a better world so she can achieve her American dreams and all the other little faces could achieve their American dreams. That was 12 years ago. What do I do to make this a better world? And that's the challenge that we all have today in order to keep the American dream alive. What do we do individually and collectively to make this a better nation and a better world? Because as the Gipper used to remind us, freedom never more than one generation away from extinction. We can't pass it on in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what the United States used to be like when men were free. I'm not going to have that conversation with my grandkids. And I don't think you want to have that conversation with your grandkids. And so to all of those that are trying to rewrite the Declaration, to all of those that are trying to ignore the Constitution, to all of those that are trying to destroy the free market system in America, to all of those that are trying to destroy and change our cultural and religious values in this country, I have a breaking news announcement. The United States of America is not going to become the United States of Europe, not on our watch.